For this tutorial, we are going to need our basic bodice pattern, both the front and the back. Okay, so here is my own back pattern. Right here is the front pattern. We are going to need our sleeve pattern as well. So these are like the most important patterns that you need. So whether your basic bodice pattern has darts or not, it doesn't matter. Okay, so just grab whatever you have, and we are going to be creating the pattern for the bomber jacket that we want to make. So we're going to start by working on our front pattern. Now here's my original pattern. I placed it 1.5 inches away from the edge of the new pattern paper. As you can see, this 1.5 inches will serve as our zipper allowance. So I'll just go ahead and mark that out so we know where our zipper allowance is. You can decide to make yours 1 inch. You can decide to go with 1.5 inches just like I did, but just note that adjustments can be made on your fabric. Okay, so here is the zipper allowance for the front of 1.5 inches. For the neckline of my original pattern, neck depth is 3.5, neck width is also equally 3.5. So I'm going to leave it like that. You can decide to make yours 3 inches by 3 inches. That is up to you. Then another place where we are going to make an adjustment is the width of the hip. If you want your bomber jacket to be fitted, you can leave your hip measurements as is, or go on to add an additional ½ inch to your hip measurements. If you want it loose, you can go on to add 1 inch. If you add ½ inch, in total you are adding 2 inches. If you add 1 inch, in total you are adding 4 inches to your hip measurement. So I'm going to be adding an additional ½ inch to mine. I don't want it to be too big, so I add ½ inch. Then I measure whatever it is that I have here, okay, from the mark to where I have my zipper allowance, and I have 11.5 inches. I'm going to come to my bust and mark that 11.5 inches. Bomber jackets from bust to hip is like a boxy shape, so I go ahead and mark that 11.5 inches, and I'm going to, square this out. What I'm going to do next is to mark out the armhole, the shoulder slope, as well as my neckline here. And once I'm done with this, I'm going to take out the original pattern, and we're going to be adding seam allowances of ½ inch only at the bottom here, at the side seam here, armhole, shoulder slope, and neckline. So here is what the front pattern looks like, and we're going to be cutting 2 of this. So we're going to need 2 of this for our front pattern. But because we're making this reversible, I need to cut 2 of this for the 2 different fabrics that I'm going to need. Okay, so 2 for one fabric, 2 for the other fabric. Now what I'm going to do next is to work on the bottom cuff of this bomber jacket. If you've noticed in bomber jackets, you would see something black or a different color that sort of like makes the bomber jacket snug around the body. So that is what we're going to be working on now. So I just got a piece of pattern paper and I placed the bottom of my front pattern right on top of it. So I'm going to draw a straight line at the bottom, mark from the points, excluding the ½ inch seam allowance here and excluding my zipper allowance here. So I'm just going to go ahead and, mark those points. What I'm going to do next is to draw a straight line across. Since we want this to be snug around the body, I'm going to go ahead and remove 2 inches from this 11.5 inches. So I remove 2 inches. This is because the kind of fabric that you're going to use will stretch. So if you have a very, very stretchy fabric, you can go ahead and remove up to 3 inches. My own fabric for the brim is very, very stretchy. So I'm going to go ahead and remove 3 inches for mine instead of going with 2 inches. And if I remove 3 inches, I will be left with 8.5. I'm going to make the width of this band to be 2 inches. So I come right here, I mark 2 inches, come down here as well, I mark 2 inches, and I join the points together like so. We're going to take this part as the bottom of the cuff. So I'm going to write bottom here. And this part must be cut on fold. You are going to be folding it like this. So can you see what I'm doing? So here is the bottom. It needs to be cut on fold. So make sure you indicate that on your pattern. So what we're going to be doing is adding seam allowances at this side, and at this side, I'll be adding seam allowance of 1/2 inch. Now, if you decide that you want to add Ankara to your bottom cuff, you would have seen that in some bomber jackets. If you want to add Ankara, know how much Ankara you want to add. I'll be going with 2 inches for mine. And if I should remove 2 inches from the 8.5 that we have here, I'll be left with 6.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and do this part first. So I mark 6.5 inches here. I join the points. So I'm going to label here ribbed fabric, because what I'm working with is a ribbed fabric for the black part. And remember I said it is on fold. I'll add seam allowances 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch right now there. That I've drawn the pattern, I will go ahead and cut this out. We subtracted 2 inches for the Ankara part, so I'm going to go ahead and mark that 2 inches. So I have 2 inches here, 2 inches here. Then I'm going to add 1/2 inch seam allowance here, add 1/2 inch seam allowance right here as well. Mark the width of the cuff, which is 2 inches. Do the same thing here. Mark 2 inches. So I'm going to repeat the same thing here as well. And then I'm going to cut. Please always make sure that you label. Okay, so here is the bottom. This 1/2 inch here is what I'm going to join to the ribbed fabric. And we're going to cut this on fold. Because this is for the front and the front is divided into 2, we're going to need 2 of this and we're going to need 2 of this. What I'm going to do is pin this together so we don't lose our pattern pieces, and I'm going to keep this aside. For this bomber jacket, I'll be doing 2 types of pockets. The external fabric will have the welt pockets. The internal fabric will have the patch pockets. Because we're making this reversible, I want to have 2 different types of pockets on this bomber jacket. I'm going to find the midpoint of my pattern, and remember what we have here is 11.5, and 11.5 divided by 2 is what? 5.75. I'm going to come somewhere around here and mark that 5.75 inches. The next thing I'm going to do is come right here. The beginning of the pocket would be at around 18 inches. Okay, so I come right here, I mark 18 inches. We need to find that 5.75 inches. So I'm going to remark that again. So here is my 5.75 inches. And your pocket should sort of like lean towards your center front. This pocket is going to come sort of like this. My pocket is going to be slanted. So my pocket width is going to be 5 inches. So I mark 5 inches for my pocket. I go ahead and measure what I have here. It is 3.5. From where I marked the 5 inch of the pocket to the side seam. Okay, and then from here to here is 4.25 inches. So once I'm done marking my pockets, I'll just go ahead and join the points like so. So this is where we are going to be attaching our welt pockets. So I'm just going to label this welt pockets. So for the external pocket, which is going to be for the inner fabric, I'm going to be going with a measurement at the bottom, you know, from this zipper allowance part to where, you know, my welt pocket mark is at this point, okay? And then I'll go from here to about 4 or 5 inches away from the zipper allowance, okay? So the shape is going to be like this, come like this, and come, you know, down. The distance from the side seam to the welt pocket here is 3.5 inches. And from here to here is 4.25 inches. So I'll get a fresh pattern paper and go ahead and mark that. So first of all, I'm going to draw a straight line. I draw another straight line on this side. After drawing these 2 lines, I'm going to come right here and mark 4.25 inches. So I mark 4.25 inches here. From here to here, I'm going to measure. What I have is 8 inches. So I come right here, I mark 8 inches. Please ignore these dots. Then I measure from here to the bottom. I have 8.75 inches. So the height of the patch pocket or external pocket will be 8.75 inches. So I just mark 8.75 inches here. So we need to make sure that the distance between here and here, which is 8 inches, should be the same for this part as well. Very, very important. So it should be the same. And that's exactly what I have. So I go ahead and join this together. Then I mark from here to this point 4 inches. Join the points. And what we are going to do next is to create like a curve to this point. You can decide to go with 3 inches or 4 inches is not a must. You can decide to go with 3 inches. In fact, let me go with 3 inches instead of 4. So I went with 3 inches and I'll go ahead and, create a curve. I mistakenly connected the 4 inches instead of the 3 inches. Okay, so I'll go ahead and correct that. I'll connect the 3 inches like so. So this is the 3-inch connection. This is the mistake I made here. And I'll go on to add half an inch seam allowance all the way around for this patch pocket. And we're going to be needing 2 of this. When cutting this for the inner fabric, we're going to cut 2 of this. One will go to the right, the other one will go to the left. So I'll go ahead and add my seam allowances of half an inch here, half an inch here, half an inch here, half an inch here, as well as half an inch at the pocket opening. So here is my patch pocket all cut out. The next thing I'm going to do is to work on the back pattern before we go on to create the band for the neckline. We're ready to work on the back pattern. The back pattern is similar to the front pattern in the sense that it is going to have the same boxy shape and dimension. The only difference is just going to be, the armhole shape, the neckline. For the neckline, I'm going with a neck depth of 1 inch. The neck width remains the same as that of the front, which is 3.5 inches. Then for the back, there is no opening, there is no cut. So your back pattern is going to be cut on fold. So what I'm going to do right now is to measure what I have for the front. And right here is 11.5 inches, excluding the seam allowances. So at the hip and at the bust, I'm going to be having 11.5 inches. So I go ahead and mark that 11.5 inches right here. Come to the bust area, do the same thing, mark 11.5 inches. And I go on to join the points. What I'm going to do next is to connect the armhole from here now all the way to this point. Then I'm going to trace out everything that I have here. So after tracing out, I went on to add half an inch seam allowance at my neckline, my shoulder slope, armhole, the side seam, and the bottom of the pattern. Remember, we are cutting a back pattern on fold. In order to cut the band for the back pattern, that's the bottom band cuff, we are going to need the front. My pattern for the front, for the bottom cuff, is divided into 2 because I am adding Ankara fabric to mine. But for the back, it is going to be the plain ribbed fabric. So what I'm going to do is to place my front pattern. I'm going to place them on top of each other, making sure that the half an inch seam allowance will overlap. I'll go ahead and pin them together like this. After coupling the 2 pieces together, this piece that we have here is going to form our back band pattern, but you will need to remove half an inch on one side and label where you removed that half inch on fold. Do you understand? The reason why you are labeling that part on fold is because your back pattern is going to be cut on fold. It is not divided into 2. I'll go ahead and duplicate, whatever I have here for mine on another piece of pattern paper, just as it is. After duplicating, this is what I have. This is what my back pattern looks like. And I went ahead to label this side on fold, and I wrote center back here. This part too will be on fold. So that we don't make the mistake of cutting just this piece, we are going to cut our back pattern cuff on fold here and on fold here. Let me explain to you with the fabric. You are going to fold it into 2 like this, and then fold it like this. So you have the folded edge here as well as here. Okay. In order to draft the pattern for the neckline band, I'm going to measure my neckline. This is my back pattern. I measure from here, from the line of fold, and I have about 4 inches here. So if we should double that for the back, it is going to be what? 8 inches. Then I come to the front, measure from here. So my front is 5.5 inches. If we should double it, it is 11 inches. So 11 plus 8, that is what? 19 inches. I'm going to get my pattern paper. I fold my pattern into 2. So from this folded part of my pattern paper, I'm going to measure 9.5 inches, because the 19 divided by 2 that we just calculated will give us 9.5 inches. So I'll come right here and mark 9.5 inches. You can decide to go with a neckline band of 1 inch or 1.5 inches. So I'm going to be going with 1.5 inches for mine. So I'm basically just drawing a rectangle of 9.5 by 1.5 inch. So I come right here at my line of fold, I mark 1.5 inches, and I go on to join the points. So after marking this, we're going to go ahead and shapen our neckline band. What I'm going to do is to come around this point, mark about 3 inches from this part here, and what I'm going to do is to curve it out. Okay, so I'm just going to curve it out like this, and I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/2 inch seam allowance and cut this out. After cutting this out, I went ahead to label it our neckline band, and this straight part is the part that is going to be cut on fold. Okay, so by the time we open this up, this is what it looks like. This straight part will be cut on fold. This is how the pattern will sit on your neckline. Okay, so this is how it is going to sit. So you need to cut the straight part on fold. I'm going to keep this aside, and we're going to work on our sleeve. So I've placed my sleeve pattern on a fresh piece of pattern paper, and what we want to do is to, map out our sleeve for the bomber jacket. You need to make sure that the sleeve head of your sleeve matches the armhole of your bomber jacket pattern. So I'm going to get the front piece, and I'll measure the armhole on the inside. So if I should measure this, I have 11 inches. So this is my front pattern. I have 11 inches. I will go ahead and measure what I have on my sleeve pattern. If I don't have up to 11 inches, I'll have to correct that by creating an extension. So I'll go ahead and measure the front, and I have about 9.125. So I'm just going to go ahead and extend this to 11 inches. So here is my 11 inches. I'll go ahead and extend it like so. Then I'll get my back pattern, measure the armhole. So my armhole for the back is measuring 10.625 inches. So I'll come right at my sleeve. Here is the back. I measure and extend this to 10.625 inches. Okay. So after creating the extension for the sleeve head, what I'm going to do is to measure from the extension. Okay, I measure from this extension to the other extension right here, and I have 17 inches, and we need to make sure that we have 17 inches as well at the bottom. What I'm going to do right now is to look for the mark on my tape roll that matches the midline of this sleeve. Okay, and that mark is just around 8.625 inches. We want to make this as boxy as possible. So I'm going to come to the bottom here, place 8.625 inches at that midline, mark the beginning of my tape roll right here, and then I'm going to mark 17 inches right here. And what I'm going to do next is to connect from this point to this point, draw a straight line at the bottom, connect from this point here to this point here to give us the boxy look for our sleeve. And then I'm going to go ahead and trace out this sleeve head that we have here. So after tracing out, I added a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, and I went ahead to cut out my sleeve pattern. So this is what it looks like. Here's the back, here's the front, so that I do not make any mistake. And the length of my sleeve is measuring around 24 point something inches, 24.25 inches. Okay, so I went ahead with this sleeve length, and it is a little bit, you know, past my wrist. By the time we add the cuff and move it back upwards, it is going to form like a bulge. I felt that this place, the bottom part, was a bit too wide. If we measure, we have 17 inches, right? So I'm going to reduce this to 14 inches. I'll be removing 1.5 inches from here and 1.5 inches from here. And then I'll go on to connect it to this point. So I'll connect it like so. Then add my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Repeat the same thing for this side. Connect it like so. And then I add my new 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then I cut my new sleeve pattern out. After making the adjustment to my sleeve, this is what I have right here. And we're going to go ahead and move to the cutting of the wristband or the wrist cuff, whichever you want to call it. And of course, for this sleeve, we're going to be needing 2 pieces for the outer fabric and 2 pieces for the inner fabric. For my wristband or the wrist cuff that would be attached to the bottom of the sleeve, I went with my wrist circumference for this pattern. You can go ahead and use your wrist circumference minus 1 inch, because you know the fabric that we're going to use is quite stretchy. So this is the main pattern right here. Then I added 1/2 inch seam allowance at this point here and at this point here. I didn't add at the bottom here because we're going to be cutting this part on fold. And this is what I mean. Here is the ribbed fabric. Okay, can you see I'm folding it into 2? So this folded part is going to be at the bottom here. Do you understand? So that is what I mean by cut this part on fold. The ribbed fabric that I'm going to cut out is going to stretch across this 14 inches. So you don't need to worry about the discrepancy between the width of the bottom of the sleeve and the length or the width of the wrist cuff or wristband. So that is it for this pattern. We are done cutting our pattern pieces. We have our sleeve, we have our sleeve cuff, we have our front and our back pattern, we have our bottom cuff, what we're going to attach at the bottom of, you know, the bodice pattern. We have mapped out our welt pockets where it is going to be, and we have mapped out the outer pockets for the inner fabric of our bomber jacket, as well as cut the neckband for this bomber jacket pattern. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Kindly give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, turn on the bell so you get updates when I post new videos, and I'm going to be seeing you in my next tutorial. Bye.